Alright, guys and gals, welcome back to Required Reading. I'm so glad that you've decided to join us for another couple of chapters. This week, we are going to be reading chapters 19, 20, and 21, and I hope you are in for a surprise, because there's some fun stuff coming up. Of course, I'm talking about the reading of the novelization of the movie Gremlins 2, which was written by David Bishop, and of course based on the motion picture written by Charlie Haas, and the characters created by Christopher Columbus. So let's dive right in. Chapter 19. Between the floors of the Clamp Center, the insanity escalated and elevated. It even climbed up and down the steps on its own. The fire alarm had sent people into a panic, and they were spilling down the halls in a great raging numbers. Of course, since there was no smoke, they didn't have much real cause to fear fire. But those of the more privileged actually saw clumps of rampaging gremlins, and news of the monster infestation spread even faster than wildfire. Billy Peltzer didn't have the luxury of panic. He knew he had to stay together, stay rational and in control. He knew better than anyone how to deal with these things, and since it was his fault they were loose again, well, it was his responsibility to stop them. Just exactly how, Billy hadn't the faintest idea, but he was going to have to do it some way. Billy and Forrester were hurrying down the hall, headed for the system's control center. It was there, Billy hoped, that they could get a grip on the problem, and they hurried, though they suddenly encountered a stream of lab animals scrambling down the hall like escapees from Noah's Ark. Mice, monkeys, rats, rabbits scampered and scurried under their legs. Following them was none other than an older man in a lab coat, eyes crazed, his gray hair mussed and his glasses askew. Billy recognized him as Dr. Catheter, the head researcher from the Splice of Life. "The horror! The horror!" Dr. Catheter cried. "The breakage!" Billy stopped him. "Doctor! What? What happened?" "Yeah, pal," said Forrester. "What the hell's going on? Did you crazies cause all this carnage?" Catheter seemed to totally ignore Foster's question. "I swear to God, I will never hurt anything again. They're all part of the great chain of being. There are things that man was not meant to splice." "What the hell is he talking about?" demanded Forrester. "Try and calm down," said Billy. "Where were the—"
"There, the novelaire, Mr. David Bishop, Esquire, has been successfully waylaid and is now tied up in the bathroom of his Los Angeles apartment, and I think you'll find your intrepid narrator, the voice of all of this, is hanging around somewhere. Do not attempt to adjust your book. Do not attempt to adjust your audiobook. We have control of the programming. Please excuse the rudeness. You have previously known me as the gremlin that drank the brain fluid, or as Bishop quaintly called me, Mr. Glasses. Believe it or not, in the screenplay I am referred to as Brain Gremlin. I want to take this opportunity to talk to you about our philosophy towards life, so that we will not be misunderstood and branded as monsters. Yes, but faithful novel readers, I do not intend to cheat you. In the movie presentation, gremlins take over the movie theater. Ah, what a delicious conceit. Excellent. Joe, was that you? And Hulk Hogan comes to the rescue. I do believe that Kenneth Tobey of The Thing is somewhere in there. However, let us now deal with more intellectual matters. In the great paradigm of anti-intellectualism, that is the vast American undermention, there needs to be a seismic quake of thought, a veritable avalanche of anarchy, to goose you somnolent beings from your couch potato torpor. May I offer you the services of we gremlins? You may hereafter refer to us as the new capitalist democratic nice folks. Already our numbers are spreading out from the heart of America to aid you in this endeavor, and although you may be viewing this physically for the first time now, except for those lucky citizens of Kingston Falls who received a foreshadow some years ago, our intellectual forces have been at work for some time, albeit embodied in human form. According to my contacts with our crypto CDs, the Church of the Subgenius, it is generally not known, for instance, that the entirety of our network television is programmed by proto-capitalist Democrats. However, the past is merely prologue, introduction forward with some long footnotes thrown in. Our time is now. So, my dear readers, oh, the few, the chosen literate who have been intelligent enough to purchase this volume, prepare for a new age of the new capitalist Oh, dear. Mr. Bishop seems to have successfully axed his way out of the bathroom. Methinks I need to fly and return this temporarily liberated keyboard to his superb, urbane, and witty prose. Back I fly to the Clamset.
Chapter 20. Gremlins amok in a genetics lab. Boy, high concept time in Hollywood sounds like big BO and good box office, too. Billy Peltzer wasn't thinking much about Hollywood films as he ran to Splice of Life Labs. He was trying to figure out how to contain this havoc on the half-shell. When he arrived, the gremlins were chomping and guzzling away, going through all kinds of contortions, flopping about willy-nilly, shuddering and generally ripping through a series of changes like something in a Joe Dante film from hell. Billy spotted a gremlin at a lab table, grabbing for a vial containing a crackling, zapping fluid. The vial was labeled with a stylized lightning bolt. The gremlin did not merely drink this stuff. He swallowed the entire vial with a profound glunk sound. Billy stood back, expecting some kind of change, but nothing happened. There was no transformation. However, the gremlin seemed inordinately attracted to a wall socket. It stepped forward and put its claw out towards the plug hole. As soon as the claw touched, there was a loud clap of thunder, and the entire gremlin exploded into a neon catastrophe of power. Its light outlined body shuddered for a moment, and then the gremlin changed into a being of raw current, was sucked into the plug. Oh, great, thought Billy. Wonderful. The electric company was going to be absolutely thrilled. In another part of the room, Frank Forrester was having heavy dating problems. His new amour, a beautifully made-up gremlin with purple hair, a tight, short, sequined dress, and awful lips, was hanging onto his leg while he tried to escape through the door. "Look, lady," he was saying, "you don't want me. You really don't want me. Oh, my girlfriend's dumping me. So why don't you?" However, the girl gremlin seemed absolutely smitten and intent upon her goal. Gremlin seduction. Meanwhile, Dr. Catheter, like his idol Dr. Moreau, was having a little bit of difficulty with the transformed beasties. He stuck his hand in the cabinet expecting to pull out a 12-gauge or one of his Uzis. Instead, he pulled out a gremlin, its teeth buried into his arm. Trying to shake it off, the scientist went tripping through the wrecked lab, crashing into the equipment. A number of other gremlins, seeing the guy and doubtlessly sensing a mad scientist, jumped upon him and sent him stumbling to the floor. Billy had other things to worry about, though. He had spotted one of the mohawked gremlins at a particularly dangerous spot, fooling with a cage containing the biggest tarantula that Billy could imagine. Upon the cage hung a bottle connected to the hairy body of the tarantula by a surgical tube. Right, thought Billy, essence of huge spider. There was absolutely no question about what kind of beastie this gremlin would turn into. Not only that, it would be a huge beastie. He had to stop this unholy communion, so he hurried over to the scene, grabbing up a length of piping to club the thing with. However, his intervention was not to be, for just as he reached the mohawked gremlin, lightning arced across the room from the AC outlet to AC outlet, forming a horror comics configuration of a gremlin sketched in jagged electricity. The thing zapped across the gap, getting in between Billy and the gremlin at the spider table, forcing him to back away. Giggling, the mohawked gremlin grabbed the vial and hurried away, escaping the lab. Cackling and crackling, the electric gremlin arced across the air, spraying the area with a profound smell of ozone. Billy was thrown back, his hair standing on end. Fortunately, the thing swam towards a table chock full of scientific gadgetry, including, amongst this collection, was a large cyclotron. The electro-gremlin touched it, and it started spinning crazily. It bent over to examine it closer, and was sucked by electromagnetic forces directly into the motor, shorting out in a showering explosion of sparks and smoke. Billy heaved a sigh of relief. Fortunately, the electro-gremlin would be contained in there, but he knew this reprieve from melodrama would not last long, and if that gremlin got into New York City's power plants, God alone knew the havoc it would cause. Daniel Clamp sat in his office, trying not to be overwhelmed by all this craziness, and he thought that his buddy Donald Trump had had problems with that Ivana thing. Boy, this was much worse. Dealing with a skyscraper full of little green monsters was as bad as... Well, it was almost as bad as a skyscraper full of lawyers, for God's sakes. He had a fifth of his favorite oh crap, what a hell of a day whiskey in one hand and his telephone in the other, and he'd just taken a swallow out of one and was talking into the other to his PR firm. Yeah, right. For God's sakes, the people are going to survive. The building's going to survive, but I need some public relations damage control here. What do I tell them? Tell them everything's under control. We've just had a few problems, and we're getting everything under control, and something attracted his attention. One of the monitors, previously blank, showed a card scrawled with the words, Clamp Cable News Network. The sign dropped away to reveal a badly composed and shakily minicam image of the lobby. Little green monsters, the things that Bill Peltzer had called gremlins, were creating total carnage. But this was not what fully drew Clamp's utter astonishment. A live report from the center of the Clamp building crisis. We have been invaded. This invasion by strange creatures, perhaps from another galaxy, or a dimensional warp. Dracula? Said Clamp. There was a guy in a Dracula costume holding a CCNN mic doing a live report spot. It was Grandpa Fred from the Late Creature feature. The camera, wobbling, caught a fast glimpse of gremlins in kids' clothes frolicking past in the background. And just moments ago, said Grandpa Fred, his eyes growing wide as saucers, putting a bit of horror show spin on his delivery, in a spine-tingling, blood-chilling incident, he seemed to catch himself and turned back to staccato David Brinkley. They continue to plague this troubled structure throughout what has been a turbulent and tumultuous afternoon. Oh, shit, said Clamp. Not only was this a goddamn news leak, it was being leaked by one of the undead, and Velvet Drag. who looked like Grandpa Munster yet. "Herb," said Clamp, "do we have a division that deals with bad PR hemorrhaging?" Outside the Clamp building, at the edge of the crowd, one of the less fortunate TV news people, unable to get inside for the juicy bits, was arguing with a cop. "Look, just let us in there," he was saying. "We'll take the responsibility." "Forget it, pal," said the sterling example of New York's finest, his lunch of beer and donuts still on his breath. "Most of the people are out of there now anyway." "Then who's in there? Look, I've been in Beirut." "Oh, yeah? I bet they miss you there." He pushed the guy back, looking as though he'd like to take the mic and jam it down his throat. Then the cop addressed the crowd. "Let's move it back, folks." Just then, the wailing that had been just in the background solidified into two bright red fire engines pulling up, parting the crowd. Firemen piled out and connected their hoses to hydrants, and cops pushed the crowd back to clear a path to the door for the firemen. It was at that moment that the Futtermans arrived. Murray Futterman was breathing hard, and so was Sheila. But by golly, they'd made it all those blocks to the Clamp building, and by gosh, Murray was going to do something. He wasn't going to let those goddamn little monsters push him around anymore. Murray spotted a TV news guy interviewing a flouncy-looking, disheveled lady. "Murray, that's Microwave Marge. I watch her all the time. She's the one who taught me how to make the microwave corn doodle chowder." Murray elbowed his way forward towards the news guy. He had to speak his mind, goddammit. And then, Microwave Marge was saying, "and then these horrible green things came into the kitchen, and they put all kinds of metal utensils and cooking ware into the units, the ovens, which you're never to do. It's not like your conventional oven. It produces a reaction, and it exploded, and the horrible things they were laughing, and..." "Cripes," thought Futterman. These creatures were already at it. They were probably swarming all over the inside of the building. They must be practically spilling out of the office by now. He fretted to the missus, who could only goggle at the excitement, trying to get her breath back from the run. She was pointing animatedly over to where the fire engines had pulled up to the curb. Rain-coated and helmeted firemen had just affixed hoses to the plugs and were about ready to turn on the water pressure. "Yikes," said Murray Futterman. "Big no-no. Jeez, if those sprays of water hit those gremlins—" "Hold it!" screamed Futterman, running over and blocking the entrances so that the firemen couldn't get past. He was waving his arms like a madman. "Wait, no water!" "What?" said the foremost fireman, baffled. "It's not a fire in there. I don't care if the alarm is on. It's gremlins. If you put the water on them, they just multiply." He turned to the cop nearby. "You gotta let me in there. I know how to deal with the problem." Sheila suddenly found her voice. "Murray!" But Murray Futterman knew what he had to do. Nope, he wasn't afraid of no gremlins now. But what scared the shit out of Murray Futterman right now was the idea of those things getting out of hand, reproducing, and spilling out into the rest of the world. But the cop blocked a would-be savior's path. "Sure, pal. Look, why don't you calm down a little? Just don't talk to me like I'm crazy." And then it hit him like a ton of bricks. The whole Megillah. The great big ball of wax. "I was never crazy. I'm fine." Sheila grabbed him and held him close. "Of course you are, Murray. I told you that all along. I'm fine." He turned back to address the people in the crowd. "There really are gremlins, and they're in the Clamp Center right now. Little big-eared monsters. They're just the evilest little imps you ever saw. And I'm not crazy." The folks in the crowd, of course, did not seem to agree with that estimation. Billy Peltzer raced into Daniel Clamp's office. He needed help, and Daniel Clamp was the only one that could give it to him. Clamp was pacing his office fretfully when he saw Billy coming towards him. He looked up with hope in his face. "Billy, how's it going out there? Any progress? Just tell me there's progress." "Yeah, I'm afraid it's pretty bad out there right now, sir." "Bad? It's horrible," said Clamp. "There are people in this building, real lives. Do you have any idea what kind of lawsuits we're looking at here?" "Yes, sir. Well, we'll have to..." But just as he was speaking, he heard a sick-making, familiar crackling sound. He turned around in time to see the electro-gremlin doing its strange, arcing dance just short of the ceiling, coming this way. Clamp saw it too. "Help!" he cried. Hardly even thinking about what he was doing, Billy grabbed the receiver of a video phone and stepped between Clamp and the electro-gremlin. As though the receiver was a catcher's mitt, he put it up between Clamp and the electro-gremlin. The thing zapped into the receiver, and with an electrical conflagration, it disappeared inside. "Good grief, look at that!" said Clamp. The electro-gremlin was caught inside the video phone's screen. Trapped, it was writhing in electro-rage as recorded voices bounced around and issued from the phone's speaker. Recorded voices rattled from the speakers. "If you want to make a call, please hang up and try again. We're sorry, all circuits are busy now." Billy looked up to Clamp. "He's in the phone system on hold. I should take care of him for a while." Another recorded voice announced, "While waiting, we invite you to listen to a brief interlude of recorded music." The music started playing. It was a cheery Mantovanian meets the Muzak version of Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head, segueing into a sprightly Memories from Cats. The electro-gremlin writhed. Its rage turned into total agony. Daniel Clamp looked up, his honest and open American face filled with honest and open appreciation, recognition. Bill, thanks." "Sure, Mr. Clamp. We have to stop these things from leaving the building. If they get out, that's it for New York. At least, New York." Another look on the open and honest Jimmy Stewart face. Consternation. A grave nod, and then Daniel Clamp, looking like a Midwestern mortician of a previous century, just requested to intern Abraham Lincoln, opened a drawer and removed a video cassette. "I thought I would never have to run this, Bill. But maybe I will." "What is it?" "The sign-off. The big sign-off." He put the tape into a VCR under his wall monitors, several monitors filled with a montage of images, beautiful shots of animals, sunsets, beaches, tranquil streams. Profound and deep New Age electronic music streamed from the stereo speakers as a narrator intoned resonant words. "Because of the end of civilization, the Clamp Cable Network now leaves the air. We hope you have enjoyed our programming, but more important, we hope you have enjoyed life." A bright teenage girl singer's voice poured over the continuing montage like treacle, singing a sprightly version of an old hymn. "Yet in my dreams I be near my God to thee." Clamp turned away from the images, his chest swelling with emotion. He wiped away a tear with his forefinger. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" "Yes," said Billy. He was looking at the complex tapestry of controls. "Listen, sir, can you set the clocks in the building ahead 3 hours? All of them?" Clamp looked like a schoolmarm about to discipline a student. "Bill, there's nothing we can't do in this building." "Why?" "Well, sunlight kills these things. That's why they're still in here. But when it's sundown, or when they think it is, they'll all get out together in one place so that they can get out. They'll all be in the lobby." "Right," said Clamp. "That's the only way out. The front doors." He He whipped a pocket wizard from his jacket and tapped orders into a MIDI keyboard, then examined the results. The sun sets at 7:25. So around 4:20, just before they try to leave, that's when we can make our move. I like that. They're off balance. We've got information they don't. That's when you can really take someone out. He blinked, then looked again at Billy. By the way, Bill, what is our move? Well, it's just an idea. You'll have to set it up from outside the building if you can get out there. Yeah, I've got my own entrance. You should get out too. There's some things I still have to take care of in here. Things and people. This idea of yours. Yeah. It's going to be tricky, but if it works, then you could save the city. Save the city. Clamp smoothed his finger across the imaginary headlines in the sky. Developer saves city. Good. Shoot. Billy Peltzer got moving. Chapter 21. Of all the outrage that his gremlin progeny had put him through, this was the worst. Gizmo struggled against his bonds, once again wishing that he had not been so curious, once again cursing himself, although this was very difficult for Mogwais, since the creatures had no curse words in their vocabulary. The closest was stinky ice cream and not good person, for crawling out of the drawer directly into water and much, much trouble. George and Lenny and a raft of mohawked gremlins had been putting him through hell, or in Mogwai language, unheaven. He didn't know how he'd survived the incredibly perverse choo-choo train torture and the absolutely ungodly game of racquetball with Gizmo as the ball. But survived he had, which had given George an even nastier idea, an idea which they were implementing now, with great gremlin glee. An idea straight out of Edgar Allan Gremlin. They were in the copy shop. Gizmo was tied with heavy twine to the top of a paper-cutting table. Above him, George hung by one arm from a high shelf. In his other claw, George held a pendulum rigged from a T-square, a protractor, rubber bands, and at the end, gleaming in the candlelight and occasionally blurred by the incense they were burning, was a razor-sharp blade knife. George swung the pendulum. The knife blade moved closer to Gizmo's chest. Closer, closer, closer. Each pass. The mohawked gremlin cackled at Gizmo's dilemma. He paced back and forth beside the torture scene, like a melodramatic villain swilling whiskey. He slurped the liquid from the vial he'd stolen from the genetics lab. On the label was a picture of a spider. As the blade moved closer, grazing Gizmo's fur, the Mogwai finally realized that if he didn't do something, it would be very bad for him. The blade sliced the top of the twine, loosening its grip on him. Gizmo's attitude towards these things had always been denial and fear. He'd always shoved them to the back of his mind when they weren't around and tried to get away from them when they were. But now the beasties had gone too far even for a peace-loving, gentle, kind Mogwai like Gizmo. Yep, they'd pushed this Mogwai too far. For a moment, Gizmo saw black. He pushed at his restraints with a strength that he did not know he had. The bonds burst, the blackness fled, and Gizmo knew exactly what he had to do. Exactly. George grabbed the T-square like a scythe and tried to hack at Gizmo with the knife blade. But Gizmo grabbed the pendulum and pulled down so hard that George tumbled from the shelf. The torturer landed on the mohawked gremlin. While the gremlins were in a heap, Gizmo scrambled away toward the door. Lithely leaping an outstretched claw, he headed down the corridor. Billy. He had to find Billy. Together, maybe they could stop this madness. And then they could have some dinner. Gizmo was starving. Marla Bloodstone stepped into the corridor, looking for somebody, anybody. The hallway was dim and deserted, and Marla got this creepy-crawly feeling that she didn't like at all. "Isn't anybody working around here?" she cried out, putting out a brave front of indignation. "Come on, I need some light in my—" Abruptly, a booming voice from the multitude of hidden speakers stopped her in her tracks. "Not stealing office supplies works for me, and the way I live today." "What?" The voice, a female's, continued. "When I save money for the Clamp organization, I feel good about myself all over." The voice sped up to an unintelligible squeak. "What the hell is going on?" She moved off into a foyer area, and then into an even darker passage. Blast it all. The girl needed some light to get around. She stumbled forward. And she suddenly ran into something. Something that gave slightly, but was sticky. She couldn't get off of it. Desperately, in the dim light, she looked about to see what it was, and her heart nearly stopped. Oh my God! It was a big, hairy spider web. She was so panicked that she couldn't even scream. Cockroaches, Marla had learned to deal with. You live in New York City, you learn to live with rats and cockroaches and foreign cab drivers. But spiders? Marla Bloodstone hated spiders. "Help me!" she cried. "Somebody help me!" But her voice echoed away unanswered. Wall Street crash, stalking run, backed up total panic. She was never going to make her deadline now. Outside the Clamp building, the sky was heading towards dark. The firemen still had their hoses connected to the hydrants and were just waiting for the first hint of smoke to start gushing, despite Murray Futterman's desperate pleas to get the water away from the Gremlins. Nonetheless, he was getting pushed back by the cops while he screamed at the firemen till he was blue in the face. "Listen to me, no water, I'm telling you, don't squirt the little bastards, they're gonna take over the world." A commotion rippled through the crowd. Something was happening on the other side of the building. From a sidewalk elevator in front of the delicatessen, Daniel Clamp stepped out towards the crowd. Immediately, he was mobbed by reporters. "Mr. Clamp, is it true that the building's being evacuated?" asked one, waving a mic forward, desperate for a comment. "Sir, is the building on fire?" "No, no," said Clamp. He gestured the fireman away. "That's a false alarm. We've just got some problems." "Problems?" said another newscaster. "You've got a guy in a Dracula costume in there, broadcasting stuff about little green monsters. Are you trying to panic New York City?" "Absolutely not," said Clamp. "Then the monsters are real?" "I didn't say that," Clamp snapped. He was a master of this news conference business, and he could deal with these guys easily. He moved off, taking the mob with him. Murray Futterman wasn't watching, though. Murray Futterman was looking at the open elevator. That was his way in, thought Futterman. That was his way to get to the Gremlins. He ran for the doors, hit the button. The doors closed up. "Murray!" cried Sheila Futterman. But it was too late. Murray was inside the elevator and headed down under the street before anyone could do anything. Murray Futterman was inside. Murray Futterman smiled to himself and took a deep breath. "Okay, you bastards, get ready, 'cause Murray Futterman's coming to kick your little scrawny butts." Boy, what a scoop. Fred Finley, a.k.a. Grandpa Fred, was absolutely charged with excitement. He'd not only lucked into a chance to cover the news here as a reporter, going from scene of crises to scene of carnage, but now he could actually make like one of his idols, Mike Wallace. He could actually interview one of them. Fred, still in his Count Dracula outfit, sat upon a plush couch. The Japanese cameraman, who'd actually done an absolutely splendid job on his whole thing, crouched before him, pulling back on his shot to get in Grandpa Fred and the, person he was interviewing, there on the other side of the couch, looking as comfortable and in control as Gore Vidal promoting one of his snide and misanthropic American historical epics. "And in an even more bizarre twist," he said to the camera, affecting a just the facts, ma'am, Mike Wallace pose, "one of the creatures," he turned to his guest. "Creatures? Is that accurate?" The gremlin nodded. Was Mr. Glasses, looking calm and reposed, smoking a cigarette in a holder, wearing a suit and a cravat, and, of course, his horn-rimmed glasses. Kazuchi grinned and bobbed his head excitedly, working the controls of his camera. "Oh, one of the creatures," said Fred to the camera, "who is able to talk, and he's going to talk to us now." Back to the smart Mr. Glasses. "I think the main question people have is, well, what do you want?" Mr. Glasses turned to the camera, his cultured tones undulating into the microphone.
"Fred, what we want is, I think, what everyone wants and what your viewers have."
A significant raise of his eyebrows.
"Civilization."
From somewhere, doubtless the bar, came the cheers of the gremlins as they clapped and pounded mugs and pitchers of beer on tabletops.
"The niceties, Fred,"
continued Mr. Glasses.
"The fine points, diplomacy, compassion, standards, manners, traditions. That's what we're reaching towards. Oh, it may stumble along the way, but civilization, yes. The Geneva Convention, chamber music, Susan Sontag, everything your society has worked so hard to accomplish over the centuries, that's what we aspire to. We want to be civilized. I mean, you take a look at this fellow here."
As it happened, a dopey-looking gremlin was wandering onto the set, grinning stupidly. Mr. Glasses pulled a gun out of his coat, aimed and shot him in the head. From the bar came the sound of gremlins cheering.
"Now, was that civilized? No, I think not. Fun? Yes. Civilized? In absolutely no sense."
Grandpa Fred, at first merely shocked, decided that sitting here on his couch with this clearly quite mad-talking monster with a smoking gun was not a good idea. Of course, that could be argued in different ways."
"We want the essentials, Fred,"
said Mr. Glasses, waving the smoking gun around carelessly.
"Dinettes, bar stools, complete bedroom groups, convenient credit, even if we've been turned down in the past. Fred, am I losing you here?"
You bet he was losing him. Gesturing at Kazuchi desperately to abandon ship, Grandpa Fred was getting the hell out of there. Outside, Billy's plan was being implemented by Clamp. The sun still had an hour to go, but inside the electronic and centrally controlled clocks had been pushed ahead a full 3 hours. As the crowd watched, workers with cranes positioned a cloth theatrical backdrop, a scene from Red Square in Moscow, in front of the doors. "A little to the left," said Clamp, supervising. "Careful, careful!" A fire chief climbed down from a newly arrived hook and ladder truck. He pulled his metal cap back and scratched his head. "What's this thing for?" Clamp pointed towards the building. "These monster things can only come out when it's dark. We've put all the clocks in the building ahead 3 hours. When they think it's sunset, and they see what a nice night it is outside, they'll be in the lobby getting ready to come out, and when they do, we drop this backdrop and then sunlight fry 'em." The fire chief turned and regarded the theatrical backdrop. "Where'd you find this thing?" Clamp grinned hugely. "It's from a musical I was backing on Broadway. The one about Stalin. It closed last week." I thought the thing looked familiar, said the fire chief. I saw that. Boy, that guy could dance. Kate, said Billy Peltzer. He was pacing quickly down a corridor, turning this way and that, looking for his fiancée. Kate? Suddenly, a windstorm swept out of the vents, whooshing around him like the devil himself turned to air. Wow, so how about that, guys? That was a crazy couple of chapters. I sincerely enjoyed that. I hope you enjoyed it as well. We will be back next week with the next, I think it's only 2 chapters that we've got left here in the novelization of Gremlins 2. But until then, I sincerely hope you have a wonderful week and weekend, and stay safe out there and keep reading.
And don't forget, you fine denizens of the internet, you kings and children of men, to please buy some of our merchandise of fair persuasion of the gremlin kind, proclaiming that she may be slippery when wet. Good night.
Cable network now leaves the air. We hope you have enjoyed our programming, but more importantly, we hope you have enjoyed life.